Hello, welcome to the Tech for Good podcast. We are very passionate about two things, technology and our world. In each pod, we will be interviewing some fascinating people, business leaders, but those with a special interest in solving the biggest issues facing humanity today. Think the environment, think healthcare provision during a pandemic, think global social injustice. If you want to know more about technology's immense potential to fix and transform, then you're in the right place. In this episode, I speak to Anthony Baker. Anthony is CEO of Satellite View, a UK startup with some groundbreaking technology to help fight climate change. It plans to use satellites to monitor the thermal footprint of every building on the planet. In the interview, Anthony gives us the Satellite View origin story, he talks about having the support of AWS, and he outlines how a recent £15 million investment will literally rocket launch his company. But first, I ask Anthony to define Satellite View's mission.
Satellite View is a UK company. We're going to launch 7 satellites into space that have a unique camera on board that can measure almost in real time the temperature of any structure on the world. So this helps really in determining energy efficiency of buildings, helps people meet their net zero targets. And we're effectively the Earth's thermometer, so we can look at the health of buildings from a distance.
Wow, it sounds amazing. Tell us about the technology that is helping you to achieve this.
Yes, so we're a UK company, and the satellite's being built in Guildford, in Surrey here. So it has a unique high-resolution camera that operates in the thermal infrared bands. So it's not night sensing, but it's very much, you can see the inside or the emissions that are coming out from a building. Whereas typical Earth observation, which you might see on Google Maps or other providers, you look at the outside of the structure, we get to see the energy that's emitting. So we're using small satellites the size of a minibar, and they're getting launched and probably with SpaceX next year.
Great stuff. And you mentioned it's a real time thing that you're offering here. How is that data transmitted? Like, what's the technology that underpins that part of it as well?
Yeah, it's near real time. So the first 7 satellites will give revisits of the UK around every other hour or so. And that imagery is transmitted down to Earth stations, so dishes on the ground, it's spread out all around the world. And we're using one of the Amazon services called AWS to provide this backbone.
Okay, yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about AWS in a minute. You mentioned, Anthony, who could benefit a bit earlier. Tell us a bit more about that. Who or what could benefit from the information that you collect and from the work that you're doing?
So everybody's declaring net zero up in COP26 this week, and thousands of the biggest companies in the world are doing the same. But everyone has the same problem. They don't know their carbon footprint today. They don't know where to spend their first pounds to make things better. So which are the worst buildings that they own or occupy? And over the long term, if they do upgrade them, did that actually work over the long term? These are very hard things to determine at the moment. Whereas the data from Satellite View will give you a list of the worst buildings and how the long-term performance works. So we've got interested customers from the council, city mayors, etc., are interested in a thermal map of their city. When you look at it, immediately you see, oh, that seems hotter than that, and this is the hottest building on this street, and maybe we should go and have a closer look. So obviously, construction companies and people that want to retrofit buildings, they're super interested in our data because it's a lead for their business. Investors. So investors want to invest nowadays in green assets, in green companies, but there's no way of checking. Right now, it's done by some financial auditing and strategy review. But there's this case of greenwashing where people purport to be green but turn out not to be. with a thermal thermometer in the sky, we can check the whole world with the same measurement, a repeatable measurement. So supply chains in China, if you're building in China, for example, can be checked with the same measurement in London, San Francisco, Japan, etc. So it's this independent, reliable, trustworthy source of data, which is what we'll provide.
So what you're saying, Anthony, is there is no real current solution for this, and what you're providing is fairly groundbreaking.
It's a new category of Earth observation data. Yeah, it's completely groundbreaking, and it will make a massive difference to the climate change agenda. We're signposting the world and what they should look for, and which problems they should address first. And we, as a startup company, have had the same problem. We don't know. It's hard to determine your impact, to actually calculate the number of tons of carbon that you're emitting. So we've just moved offices. We couldn't find out immediately the impact of that. Whereas with our data, people, at least on the construction side, on the built area, will have an indication of where they rank, and they can go and look at what buildings are good and what buildings are bad.
And when we think about the areas that we can improve as a planet when it comes to climate change, buildings and the heat impact of those buildings, is that such a big, obviously a big area for that?
Yeah, no. So buildings contribute 40% of all emissions if you include the construction as well. And we would monitor, the steel and concrete plants. So we can monitor that footprint. And some other interesting statistics is, so there's 220 million buildings built before the turn of the century, which are right for upgrade. So there's a massive market. And you probably as familiar with the energy performance certificates, EPC, as well. All commercial buildings have to be A or B by 2030 in the UK, and that's a sort of 85% of them are not. So there's a massive task for business and councils and individuals to upgrade. And so where do you start? Well, we can give you a list of where to start.
Hi, I'm Daniel Brigham, editor of the Tech for Good magazine. I hope you're enjoying this pod, and if you want more, why not head over to techforgood.net for some amazing and thought-provoking stories. You can read about one company's mission to use digital technologies in the fight against HIV, or learn how social media can help refugees take control of their narratives. For those insights and more, read and subscribe at techforgood.net.
When you look at your company, Anthony, Satellite View, where is it at currently on its journey? Give the listeners some insights there.
Yeah, we've had a very exciting couple of years. 2 years ago, we were running out of money. We were in the midst of COVID, and none of the investors were really interested in spending any money. And then we came out of this. We joined what they call a startup accelerator run by a venture capital company. They taught us about what they expect. They learned a lot about us, and so they invested in us, and so that was our seed series, and that was in April this year. We actually completed that, and then since then, last month we raised our Series A, which we raised £15 million, and that will get us to space, so we can buy our first satellite, we can buy our first rocket, and insure it all, and get ourselves into space. We're building a great team of data scientists, because the interesting thing is not just collecting the data, it's what you do with it. Turn the pixels into meaningful information and insights so that customers can do great things with it. So we're building that team out. We're about 19 people now. We're going to be doubling in the next 6 months. So yeah, we are well on our way. We have a copy of our camera that's going into space, and it's attached to an aircraft, and we've been flying up and down. We've done lots of flights in Liverpool, Southampton. We've got some stuff planned up in Scotland and around London next. So we can run these flights, collect interesting data. The customers can start to ingest it and really appreciate the depth of the value of this data set. And so when we launch, they'll be ready to buy reams of it.
Interesting story, Anthony. So this year really has been the big year for you. Like, it sounds like you were kind of maybe on a downward path before that, but the money you've raised and the momentum you built this year has been transformative.
Absolutely, I think our technology is definitely at the right time, in the right place. We've adapted the business model to address the user demand, and the insights that people want, and that's the advantage of being a startup. You can be agile, you can pivot, you can focus on what the customer's telling you very quickly, and that's the best way to succeed.
Now, you mentioned, Anthony, that it's all well and good collecting the data, but using it properly is the real thing. And you mentioned AWS, the support you had from them. Tell us a bit about how that's going to work, using their cloud services to deliver on those objectives.
Yeah, so we joined at least 2 accelerators, one backed by the VCs, and they teach you how to pitch to the investors, say the right things that are important to them, highlight those sort of aspects that show that you understand how to run a business and grow, etc. So the Amazon AWS accelerator was different. Although it was in partnership with a VC, they really accelerated our technology growth. So everything we do is in the cloud, which means we can scale very quickly. We got infinite computing power, which we can switch on and off in seconds to process the imagery that we collect. And they have some very useful tools in enabling you to do this quicker, very cost efficiently. They can plug in artificial intelligence very easily for image analysis and computer learning. So their ecosystem is very complicated. They can do many things for many people, but this accelerator helped you cut through that, help you with security on the data as well, and all sorts of things like that. So it just accelerated the deployment of the technology that we needed. And we came out of that with a great demonstrator. Also, Amazon is the customer and serves a whole lot of other partners and other commercial entities, many of them Fortune 500 companies and stock market, the leaders. And so you've got insight into them, you've got some access to them. They can do the introductions, they can sort of tell you what's relevant. They have marketplaces and connections. And so, the combination from the commercial side and the technical side was a real winner for us.
And I guess as well, Anthony, going forward, when you look to scale what you're doing, having those AWS alongside you is only going to be an advantage.
Yeah, definitely. I think working with specific user sets, whether it's government and the security that needs to be put in place there, it's out of the box there, and so scaling into other regions, you can port whatever you develop in the US or the UK into other regions. So it's a great foundation to have, and we don't have to concern ourselves so much about the infrastructure there, and certainly don't have to build it in-house, which is a great relief.
And when you look into the future, Anthony, you mentioned earlier how big a percentage buildings contribute to carbon emissions, the unique nature of your technology. When you imagine it working at scale, how bigger impact do you think this could have on the environment ultimately?
We've done some calculations that if we improve 10% of the buildings by just a few percent, it comes out in millions and millions of tons of carbon saved. And also, I think it's a very leveling technology. It's not just, it's a global system. So once it works in the UK, the satellites go around the world, multiple times a day. And so we can do this detection for anybody. So I think it really gives us a background and of the world's, where the world is wasting energy, and it can signpost to people, where to go and fix it. Obviously, we're here to make a profit so we can be sustainable ourselves, but there's also lots of opportunity for data for good, and we want to embrace that as well.
Who says children can't change the world? Our Teenage Tech Stories podcast showcases the extraordinary work of young entrepreneurs on their way to becoming tomorrow's tech leaders. Listen now via the Tech for Good podcast stream or by visiting techforgood.net.
I want to change tack a little bit, Anthony, and ask you about yourself. Tell the listener a bit about your own personal story. What's your career background?
Well, I was a graduate in Guildford in satellite communications, and I've traveled the world with that. So it's been an amazing journey. So I am the satellite guy in the company, whereas most of the other people are data scientists or from the user end. But from the satellite side, I've worked in Hong Kong, in the Netherlands. My last job, I was the first CEO in Qatar of a startup company, and we scaled it up with a couple of large satellites and valuation around $1 billion. So one of the things we were looking there was, once we've got this independent communication satellite, what else should we be looking at? And Qatar is a small country, has quite a difficult region, exports a lot of liquid natural gas, even to the UK. And this valuable asset is, once it leaves the shores, is sort of on its own on a ship. So having eyes and observation of the surroundings, whether it's for pollution or for exports, was really, really important. And with modern satellite technology, this new space era, every nation can afford to be a space nation. Obviously, Qatar could easily afford that. But the price of these things have really come down, and it can enable anyone to be a space nation of some sorts. So an Earth observation was one of these sectors, because it's not that expensive, and you get your independent view of the Earth. You're not reliant on other agencies providing this, and perhaps the data is not available when you want it. So having your own asset is a great learning exercise, and you can look at the environment. And so we looked at this. But unfortunately, back in 2016, the oil price dropped down. The Qatar put this project on hold. And so I said, right, I'm going back to London. I'm going to do this myself. I met my co-founders there, and we built our business from there. So it took a few years to find this unique technology. We tried lots of other models of reselling and looking at other types of satellite technology. But about 2 years ago, we came across this demand for infrared insights and a view of what's going on inside buildings. And then we found the right technology solution. And you've heard the rest.
It's great stuff, Anthony. And I mean, you mentioned data for good there. And do you imagine in the future opening this data set up to anyone and everyone to try and accelerate the positive change? How do you see the long-term future?
Yeah, I think for specific projects, we've definitely opened it up. Not even in the short term. We would like the government to be an anchor customer for this. Why is the UK should look at the major cities, and we can come up with some PPP where we share the investment into mapping every single city in the UK and finding where the worst emitters are, and at least having that knowledge as a public benefit. And it's not just about the wasted energy, although that's a massive use case. If you clean up energy efficiency, you generate less electricity or other ways of generating electricity, which can be diverted to other places, or you emit less into the atmosphere. So it's cleaning up the air. Another thing is, you'll notice in the summertime that cities are much hotter than the outside, the rural areas, and these are called urban heat islands. So from space now, or maybe from sensors are dotted around cities, you can map these urban heat islands by sort of postcode levels that this district is hotter than this district. With our data, we can say that building is heating up the environment, it's causing heat stress, which is could be fatal to certain people, particularly the old, are very vulnerable to hot days and heat stress. And we can direct people to go and fix it. So go and paint the roof white or plant some new trees around. And that will help again with urban regeneration, etc. So there's lots of other applications. Another one that comes to mind is pollution. Mm-hmm. So we can see in a river that goes through an industrial site, it's hotter when it comes out than when it came in. So that industrial site is somehow heating up the water. And we've heard recently in the news last week about effluent going into the sea, etc., and how that's being regulated. It's hard for the regulators to monitor what's going on, whether they're consistent with the licenses they have, because some of these processes are allowed, but it's hard to measure whether they're hitting the target. We can see it, black and white or red on black if you're looking at infrared, and you get a perception immediately whether there's something amiss here, and you can go and alert somebody to go and make a really precise measurement. So this technology has many use cases. We even think we can see plastic floating in the sea.
Oh wow. Yeah, as you said, there's so many applications. Anthony, is this the most exciting part of your career, would you say? How excited are you by this?
Yeah, I am super excited about this. Definitely. No, it's great to be at the helm of a startup company that everyone's sort of half my age and they're super enthusiastic, and it's the young. This climate change is a challenge for the young. If they're going to inherit it, but here they can fix it. If you join our company, you can help fix it and measure things. It's a privilege to be in this position. I've got the knowledge, the scars of how to do a startup company and things that go wrong and financing, but I can use my expertise and experience to enable the guys to go do the great data science and reach out to the right customers and make a meaningful difference.
And finally, the big question: when is that first satellite going to be in space?
We are shooting for October 2022 on a SpaceX launch. So just could be just a year away. Space is hard, as they say. Things sometimes get delayed, but we're full speed ahead. And if we do get delayed, we've got plenty of other things we can do. We've got the plane we can fly. But we are optimistic and we're determined that this is going to work.
That was the Tech for Good podcast. Listen, subscribe, and rate us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Stitcher.